France was losing. Badly. Imagine your country on the brink of collapse, your king discredited, your enemy occupying half your land, and then a 17-year-old farm girl shows up and says, "God sent me to save us." Sounds insane, right? But by the end of this story, you'll understand how the Siege of Orléans didn't just save a city, it flipped the momentum of the entire 100 Years' War. And you'll see exactly why this moment transformed a defeated nation into a rising power. Let's rewind to the chaos. By 1428, France wasn't just struggling, it was unraveling. England, backed by Burgundy, controlled vast parts of northern France. Paris was under enemy influence. The French king, Charles VII, wasn't even properly crowned yet. His authority barely stretched beyond central France, and many people mocked him as the king of bourgs. Then came Orléans. The city sat on the Loire River, the last major barrier between English forces and southern France. If Orléans fell, the English would have a clear path into the heart of what remained of French territory. This wasn't just another battle. It was the moment that could decide the entire war. The English weren't randomly choosing targets. Orléans was strategic gold. The Loire River was a major transportation and supply route. Control the river, and you control movement, troops, trade, and communication. Capturing Orléans would split France almost perfectly in half. So in October 1428, the English army surrounded the city. They didn't rush blindly at the walls. Instead, they built a ring of fortified outposts around Orléans called bastilles. These strongpoints slowly tightened their grip, cutting off supplies and making escape nearly impossible. Inside Orléans, people waited. Food became scarce. Soldiers were exhausted. Morale dropped day by day. Everyone understood the stakes. If the city fell, southern France would be exposed. And then something completely unexpected happened. In early 1429, a teenage peasant girl named Joan of Arc arrived at the court of Charles VII, claiming she had heard divine voices telling her to save France. Think about that for a second. She wasn't noble. She had no military experience. She had never commanded soldiers. She was a farmer's daughter from a small village. Yet she insisted that God had chosen her to drive the English out and lead Charles to his rightful coronation. At first, it sounded absurd. But France was desperate. And when you're drowning, you don't question the rope, you grab it. After questioning her and testing her claims, Charles VII allowed her to join a relief force heading toward Orléans. When she arrived in April 1429, everything shifted. She rode into the city in armor, carrying a white banner radiating absolute conviction. She didn't speak like someone hoping for victory. She spoke like someone announcing it. That confidence spread. For years, French forces had been stuck in a defensive mindset, holding walls, reacting, surviving. Joan flipped the script. She pushed for aggressive attacks on the English fortifications surrounding the city. Instead of waiting to be starved out, the French began striking the bastilles one by one. And here's where it gets dramatic. During one assault, Joan was struck by an arrow. Most leaders would have retreated. Instead, after treatment, she returned to the battlefield the same day, rallying troops with her banner. That moment wasn't just brave, it was symbolic. It told every soldier watching, this fight isn't over. Momentum began to shift. The English, who had dominated France for decades with disciplined armies and devastating victories, suddenly found themselves on the defensive. The aura of invincibility started to crack. Over the course of just 9 days of intense fighting, French forces captured key English positions. On May 8, 1429, the English lifted the siege and withdrew. Let that sink in. After months of tightening their grip, after years of dominance in the war, they pulled back. The Siege of Orléans was over? But its impact was only beginning. This victory sent shockwaves across France. It proved that the English could be beaten. Recruitment surged. Morale soared. For the first time in years, hope felt realistic. Joan didn't stop there. She urged Charles VII to march to Reims, the traditional site of French coronations, deep in territory that had been contested or controlled by enemies. It was a bold, risky move. But momentum was on their side. After a rapid campaign along the Loire Valley, Charles reached Reims. In July 1429, he was crowned king in the Grand Cathedral with Joan standing nearby. That coronation wasn't just ceremonial. It cemented his legitimacy. It turned him from a disputed ruler into an anointed monarch in the eyes of many French citizens. And legitimacy changes everything. The war didn't end immediately. It would continue for years. Joan herself would be captured in 1430 and executed in 1431. But the tide had turned. The Siege of Orléans marked the first major French offensive victory in years. It shattered the myth of English inevitability. It transformed a defensive, fractured kingdom into an energized force pushing back. And here's the deeper lesson. Battles aren't won by numbers alone. They're won by momentum. By belief. By the courage to shift from surviving to advancing. Joan of Arc didn't just help lift a siege. She reframed an entire war. France was on the edge of collapse, and one unexpected leader transformed fear into conviction and defense into attack. The Siege of Orléans didn't just save a city, it reignited a nation. If this changed the way you see history, you'll love the next breakdown on the moment another empire nearly fell, so hit like, subscribe, and let's keep uncovering the turning points that shaped our world.